Learn how to start a business in your community with Launch Local Podcast, full of know-how and inspiration from successful small business owners, including your host, Amber Artemis. Hey, Walt, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Super. I'm very excited. So, hi, everybody. It's Amber Artemis. I am here today with Walt Bevilacqua from WB Electric, and he's agreed to sit down and talk with me about his entrepreneurship journey. So, he's been an electrical contractor for 40 years. That's quite a long time, Walt. Have you been doing this since you were in diapers or what? how, how many years of this have you been self-employed?
So I've been self-employed for the last 23 years, roughly. Before that, I worked for an engineering company for 5 years. Before that, I worked for another company, and then I also worked for myself for a couple of years in between. I started in tech school when I was in 10th grade. So I was like 14, 15 years old.
So as a teenager, you took the electrical track at your local VOTEC.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And what inspired you to do that?
I came from a family of contractors, mostly masons. And so on the weekends when I was a kid, I grew up carrying buckets of bricks and mortar up scaffolding, building scaffolding. And every weekend, my dad was a union bricklayer, my uncle was a union bricklayer. And I know I didn't want to be a bricklayer.
I was gonna say, sounds fun.
Yes.
Great
So,
way to spend your weekend.
yeah, so throughout the years, and plus the family was saying, we need an electrician in the family. We don't have an electrician. So they kind of pointed me in a direction and I fell in love with it. I enjoyed the challenge, the troubleshooting. I still enjoy the troubleshooting till today. Like when there's a problem electrically, I love to try to fix it. It's something I'm really passionate about. And I think I always will be.
You're a problem solver.
I enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, you know, it sounds kind of frustrating probably to a lot of people to have to troubleshoot things, and you're just so happy all the time and so relaxed, and like you must truly love it. I know you're not lying if this is what you do
Yeah.
day in and day out and you still manage to show up as, calm and happy as you do. So that's great. So
Hide it.
you hide it. Yeah, or you take it out on somebody. Poor Jen.
I take it on myself more. That's why I'm big into biking and hiking and stuff like that. So spending a lot of alone time in the woods with my dog and whatever, hiking, biking. That's
That's
my release.
cool. Okay, so
Yeah.
you started at Votech, and then you
hmm
said you worked for some other companies for a little bit.
So I'll give you my whole resume here. Is that what you want to
Okay,
hear?
sure, do it.
So so I started in the Votech school, and then I went to co-op working for an electrical supply house down in Quakertown, something really close to me. And I worked in that for 2 years after I graduated high school to save up money for college. And I ended up going to Penn College up in Williamsport in 1988. And then I went there for 3 years because I changed my major like three times from electrical to electronics and industrial automation. So I earned my associate's degree there in industrial automation electronics, which I really loved. Um, I traveled all over. I was over in Europe and all over the country doing that for a few years, working for a couple of different companies. Then
Wow. Wait,
yeah,
hold
and
on. Pump the brakes a second. How does
yeah,
like a 22-ish, 21, I don't know how old you were, year old
yeah.
kid,
I was about 22 when I got out of
how do you
school.
how do you get sent to Europe to work as a
Oh,
22-year-old kid?
so it's probably maybe
Young
25 at that
adult.
time. By the time I got to Europe, yeah, as a young adult.
Okay.
I was so the first company I really worked for, I ended up doing cell tower build outs, and this is the like 1990, early 90s. It was like the wild frontier. You had to take up airspace. If not, they would lose it. So we were working for companies, Cellular One at the time, Bell Atlantic Mobile, companies that all got bought out by somebody at this point now. But we were putting up towers all over the country, up and down 95 corridor, 81 corridor, in the cities and all the high rises. I worked In World Trade Center, I worked up on the buildings up there, putting up towers and antennas. And I didn't do the tower piece. I did all the electronics and stuff in the huts at the time. I hook all that up, get it up and work, and could move on to the next one. That was probably my most formidable time in my life because I was working probably 100-hour weeks, and loving it. I was traveling, living out of a suitcase, and I did that for a few years to the point where you finally get burned out and you're like, I'm missing things like a girlfriend, things like that. And so that got a little bit, it got old after a couple years of doing it, but I learned more in those 2 years than I could ever imagine, just putting the time in like that.
And that's the
Um,
company that sent you to Europe?
no, this is the company before that.
Okay.
This is a company called APS. They got bought out by Yuasa Exide, which also got bought out by another company. I had left after the one buyout, I guess. And then that's the first time when I left there, I started my own company for about a year. And then the company that sent me to Europe picked me up because I was doing a lot of work for them. And they said, "Hey, we want you to work full time for us and stop doing this like the gig." And I was like, "Okay." So I took that job and worked for them for a few years. They were out of Allentown in the old Mack truck buildings. I worked out of there, and then that's the company that we did a lot of international stuff and national stuff. And I built control cabinets and um, things called PLCs, and worked over in Italy and stuff over there.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that
No,
was
no, no. Well, no,
yeah,
hold on. I'm sorry. I still wanna just one more little needle in there. So,
yeah,
just to be clear that I'm following your story, the cell tower experience that you gained,
yes, hmm
you said you didn't actually build the towers, you were working on the electrical control
underneath.
box. Yeah,
Yeah,
that you what were you calling it? The
all the controls. The well, back then it was analog
uh,
radios basically, and I would hook up all the electronics of that stuff, get it working, to move on to the next tower.
and
And there's a lot of mountaintop stuff.
okay, and so you were briefly self-employed where you started your own company, but that didn't really fly yet, and somebody picked you up and said, "Come work for us in Europe," doing the same thing? Like, you that same
Um,
skill set?
no, totally different. So it was when I started my own company, I'd left doing the cell tower stuff. I'd left that company. I was burned out, and that's when I started my own company the first time.
And
And
what was the purpose of your company? Like, what was your work, your
um,
mission?
to I was still doing industrial automation kind of thing. So I would do small projects for other industrial companies. So for example, like an assembly line, um, there's like controllers and sensors that count things or move things or assemble things, and I would do the programming and the wiring and building that kind of stuff. That's what I went to school for, that
Okay.
main thing. So I really enjoyed that. So a company had picked me up via, it was through mutual people I knew through Supply House, and they said you might want to work for this company called Demco. The company called Demco Automation. They're still in business. The owner had since passed away, but the company still exists. So I worked for them. They gave me so much work that that's all I was working for. And they said, listen, come work for us full time. I said, okay. And that's what I ended
Okay,
up doing.
so they were a client, and they just
They were
started
a
taking
client
up
that,
more and more of your time that you just went to work for
yeah.
them.
And they said,
Okay.
just work for us. And I said, okay. And I really enjoyed working for them. They were good.
And what type of work did you do for them in Italy?
That was the programming, industrial automation on PLCs and AC drives and programming. Really,
Like
it's
he's
all industrial
speaking another
control.
language.
I know, sorry. So, okay, for example, the one big machine I did over in Italy in Bergamo, it's a little north of Milan in Italy. There's a big machine that we built the control cabinets here. And what this machine did was it would melt plastic, and it was called a non-woven machine. And it would have little jets that would spray the plastic and weave it for for diaper liners, for example. You know that plastics on diaper liners that looks like it's woven? I don't know if you ever looked at a diaper liner,
Yeah.
but you could, so that would spray it. But these things were dyes that were 10 foot long to make the material. And so there was little jets that it would melt the plastic. There was a heater and a jet, heater and a jet and a sensor, and so the whole thing had to be within a couple degrees constant or it wouldn't work. It would misfire and it wouldn't weave, and then you had to start all over again. But this thing would really run a lot of it at once. So I was responsible for setting up so everything turned at the right time and the feeds worked and the heating elements worked and the sensors were telling the heaters to turn on. And there's a bunch of complicated calculus and stuff on the to make that work on the temperature, ambient temperatures and things. There was all kinds of cool
Wow.
calculations and stuff to play with. But that's the one
Okay.
thing I did there. So
Thank you for that illustrative example. Mostly in English.
yeah, yeah, I try.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was good. Thank you. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, I don't know about, like, what age, how long did that gig last? And then, what was your next step?
All right. So as I was working for them, they decided to relocate. I had relocated myself to Lake Harmony, Pennsylvania, and I fell in love with it up here. Originally being from the Quakertown area. So commuting down to Allentown was no big deal. So then they relocated to Philadelphia, which that commute became very difficult. At the same time, a headhunter had called me up for a company up in Wilkes-Barre, an engineering company. Now, a little bit different because this wasn't really hands-on at the time. It was doing designs for schools, government buildings, and stuff, doing the electrical layout and designs, big high rises and things. And I was like, this will be great because I would love the experience of being able to learn AutoCAD and do the layout and designs and calculations for that stuff. I figured it was the next step to be more diverse in the electrical field. So that headhunter had called me and I said, okay, yeah, I'll take the job. I ended up working for them for about 2.5 years. And then they had another high voltage department. And I said, well, I'm getting sick of doing all this commercial lighting layout and stuff. And the high voltage department, I already had some experience with that company that I was doing the cell towers for. I was doing substation stuff with them too. I didn't get into that because there was a lot of other things on there. So they brought me into a substation. I went around and I was comfortable because I used to test substations all over the state of New York. And this is where that company where I was doing the cell tower stuff. They were a little diverse. They did a couple different things and they loved it. So I ended up doing a lot of substation testing, getting on top of the big transformers, testing the insulators and mainly the I know this is going to sound crazy, but the relay protection, the things that so for example, do you know when your power blinks and sometimes it will blink off for another 10 seconds and then maybe 30 seconds and then it comes back on and then it will go off for a while. I used to program those relays to do that. So what would happen is if there was a fault, for example, a tree would fall on a line, it would trip the circuit breaker. The relay would say, okay, let's instantaneously trip it again so we can knock that off blow it off the line with high voltage. And that's how seriously how it works. And it would hit it again. And if it kept on doing it, it would wait 15 seconds for stuff to settle and then turn back on again, automatically reset to blow itself off. So when you see a line go down, don't go anywhere near it. That's because it's automatic and that's what happens. Then it locks itself out and that's when you're out of power for a while until a lineman gets out there and figures out what's wrong. So I used to do that for the substations for the company up in Wilkes-Barre, and we did that all over the state of Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, some in New Jersey, and some in New York. And
Wow.
then yeah, so I did that for a total of 5 years for that company. Then the CEO had retired, which I had a lot of respect for, and new CEO came in that I didn't have respect for, and I went home and said, Jen, um, I know we have a baby and one probably coming soon, another one, and we just bought this house, but I'm going to quit my job. And that's when I started the company in 2001, roughly. So
Okay.
I'm there. So, and this is, it's history from there. I'm still at it.
Well, I'm gonna get out my notes real quick
All right.
because you responded to the pre-interview questionnaire with some interesting fun facts.
All right.
So Jennifer is Walt's wife, by the way. We haven't introduced her
Yes.
properly yet, and she is one of 19 employees.
Yes. Total. Yeah.
Okay, or no, there's actually 19 besides you and Jen reading
Oh,
this,
no,
right?
total. That's total.
Oh,
That's
that's
including
total.
us.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. And that you started in 2001 by yourself using the family minivan.
Yes, we had one vehicle,
Now
and
I have to know, did it have wood panels on the side?
no, it was a maroon Safari, GMC Safari. So I would
Okay.
take the seats out and put bins and ladders and things in there and go do jobs. And that's how I started.
And did you hire anybody, or were you like a lone wolf when you first started?
I was alone for about almost the first year, probably doing a lot of
Wow.
things. And then I went to the tech school, Carbon County, and because I was a product of the tech school too, I figured I could get some help, and so I started with a co-op kid. And at that same time, I had picked up a nice contract with working for doing a lot of work at Penn's Peak. When Pencore had taken it over right around then, I came in and did a lot of rewiring and got all their stage lighting up and running, and had to figure all that out. Another thing I got into, the stage lighting was kind of fun because they're like, "What do you know about stage lighting?" I'm like, "I don't know, light bulbs on and off. I'll figure it out." So I did that for almost 18 years after that. So I was there for nights and weekends while running the company. It was insane amount
And
of time.
that's one of the shared experiences we have is, that we've worked on events together. Like
Yeah.
you volunteered to help do lighting at an art event that I helped organize when I was CEO of the community foundation. And I've been kind of waiting to hear, like, how did he learn to do that, event lighting? Because you come into an event space like that. I mean, Penn Peak is one thing, and that's where you learned it all, is what you're saying. But you would
Oh, yeah.
bring your lighting gear, which you just happen to have a nice collection of, apparently, and you would set things up for special events and
No, I did
do a
that
very good
too.
job.
Oh, for the Arts with a View at Blue Mountain. I did
Hmm.
it again. I've been still doing it. They still call me to do that ever since you did.
Yeah. Awesome.
And
And
I
yeah,
volunteer to that still.
yeah, you're very generous, Walt, with your time. I know that you've helped others out. A friend of mine that does a fundraiser, or used to do a fundraiser annually. I think that's how
Hmm.
I knew that you had this skill. Like, you used to light a ballroom for her that she would throw a party in as a fundraiser, and you're a big supporter of the arts in general. Tell me about that. Like, why what keeps you showing up at all the original music concerts in the area?
Oh, I just love music. It's been in my family. My dad's a great musician. My grandmother really turned me on to jazz and older blues, Ella Fitzgerald kind of stuff, Billie Holiday, always playing in her house. And I fell in love with the music. And
Okay,
so,
I'm gonna stop you again just real quick. Grandma and jazz, like, those 2 words aren't usually used in the same sentence. Like, you have
yeah, yeah.
who's
I had
this
a really,
cool
really
grandma?
cool grandmother. Yeah. And music was always playing in her house. It could have been opera to jazz to classical music. She was a season ticket holder for in Philadelphia Orchestra for I don't know how many years, decades. And so when I grew up going to those with her, um, and fell in love with music in general.
And
Um,
is this from the bricklayer side of your family, or is there another side of your
yes,
family? Okay,
yes.
cool.
So my grandparents were from on that side were Italian, and my mom is from England, right outside Liverpool. So anyway, and so we had a lot of always had music in the house growing up. Live. My dad was really involved with the Bucks County Folk Song Society, so I grew up at at different events. Like they would have the singer songwriter kind of things, and I grew up. They'd stuff me behind a couch, me and my brother, to go to sleep while they were playing music in a circle in somebody's living room or something. And so we kind of grew up and surrounded by that, and going to the Philadelphia Folk Festival and things like that, and um, so a
And
lot of
you
live
play.
music. Yeah, play a little bit. Yeah, I try. Yeah.
You seem reluctant to mention that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm playing more. My kids all might play. My son's really, really talented guitar player, drummer, bass player. He plays whatever you ask him to, and he's really, um, really taken on the music. He plays every single day. Has gotten really good. Now his music likes are all over the place. Like he'll play industrial thrash, heavy metal to Bob Dylan. It's kind of like all over the place, but he has appreciation for all of it, like
Well,
his dad.
I was gonna say, I mean, you have that passion for music, but it seems like you have that passion for your work too, like the way that you
Yeah.
described just wanting to experience all facets of the electrical industry, the way that a musician might challenge themselves to try different genres and what you were just describing your son doing. So that's pretty cool. Like I think and your humility is I think probably owing to the fact that like you understand and you've been in the presence of truly great musicians. Like I think you really feel, what it is to dedicate yourself to a craft because you've done it. I mean, I'm really impressed. Like you have a lot of great
Oh,
experience. And so I do
oh,
want
you
to,
are too. You're an amazing person too.
oh,
You're involved in a lot of stuff.
well, don't get me started in the self-effacing mode as well. I too, I'm like, I get by. I can play a tune, because I've been around people that just blow my mind, and I'm like, that
Oh
is
yeah.
not me. I am not putting in the hours that that guy is or that gal is, and
Uh,
but I'm just happy to keep up and go along for the ride and support them.
and, and don't you wonder, are they just naturally like that sometimes? Like some of these people?
I think
Like,
it's work. I mean, there is a natural
yeah,
predisposition to
yeah,
things. As I was listening to you talking about, problem solving in your electrical work, like I was thinking about our son Quinn, who is like a little genius, and we got him these subscription boxes from Mark Rober for engineering projects, and it's all about like solving things and figuring it out, and he really encourages kids to understand that like making a mistake is just one step of the journey and learning how to fix it. And Josh actually tries to like reinforce that too with them. Anyway, I think that we understand that there's a little bit of predisposition. There's growing up in the environment, and then there's having the opportunities, but then there's the work. You got to put in those hours. Like you just described your journey to starting your own business and having the competency that you have. It took some time.
oh yeah. We blew a lot of things up in my lifetime, and things let the smoke out of things, like we like to say in the industry.
Yeah.
'Cause everything has smoke in it. Like, whoops. So, but that happens, and you make the mistakes and you learn from them and you move on. I hope you don't, nobody gets hurt, and it's good, but it happens.
Well, and
Um,
I gotta say, I'm a big Ben Franklin fan, actually,
yeah,
and he's known for his discovery of electricity,
yeah,
and it's impressive, like what he knew early on. Like he understood the current flow, and I'm like, how the heck did he figure that out? Like the
without the
negative.
instruments and stuff, I have no idea. Like,
And I know he was, like, building on the work of others, like, he was in a community, he wasn't just, like,
mhm,
isolated thinking of this stuff, but what I wanted to mention is, like, how dangerous it was, and it continues to be to work with electricity, and that people he's known for that kite experiment. There were people that died trying to replicate that, like, flying
yeah,
a kite with some metal on it or whatever in the
yeah,
and getting struck by lightning. It's no joke. So,
yeah, like attracting lightning, fun project.
yeah.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Delicious elderberry wine, fresh and healthy elderberry syrup, crisp ciders, all available 7 days a week at Wild Elder Wine and Cider Company, 76 Broadway in Jim Thorpe, specializing in regional folk wines and ciders just like your grandparents used to make. Elderberry, blueberry, raspberry, blackberry, apple. Now serving lunch too. That's Wild Elder Wine and Cider Company, 76 Broadway in Jim Thorpe. Open every day 11 till 5. Also available online at wildelder.com.
So let's go back to your business. So you started your business as, a young father, and
Mhm.
that resonates with me because Josh and I, my husband, we started our first business when we were young parents, and the idea was that it was going to give us like more flexibility, possibly like with our to meet our needs, as a young family. How did that work out for you?
It worked out good. I was able to make time, which, would be difficult if I was working for somebody else. A lot of the time I couldn't make time was I was the only person that did the stuff at Penn's Peak for the stage lighting and stuff. So I had to be there for every single concert, every single event. So that took up a lot of my weekend time. You can imagine. Sometimes we had concerts four in a row. It would be like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I wouldn't see my family at all. It was very, maybe in the morning a little bit, and then I'd have to go set up. Some of those setups for those national acts were, they'd come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and just start setting up the sound and lights and whatever, equipment.
And who
Um,
do a little name dropping here. Who
oh
were some of
boy,
the shows that you did lighting for at Penn's Peak?
oh boy. I mean, on the countryside, from George Jones to Trace Atkins, heavy metal. I mean, I've worked with almost, I mean, everybody that's been up there in the beginning. I worked with a lot of cover bands. I did a lot of the lighting for local bands. Um, but oh boy, I mean, I could just keep on going. I mean, name dropping would be kind of silly because I don't know. I have a stack of posters all signed. Um, for almost 18 years from these bands. And some of my favorites, like for example, like Greg Allman. I worked with most of the Grateful Dead people, like Bob Weir, and just everybody. Like it's crazy amount of people. It's hard to start naming things. Kenny
Were you
Rogers.
were you at that Old Crow Medicine show around 2014, 2013?
I probably ran the lights for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Or actually,
I was
I
definitely
think,
there.
yeah, they were all the original members were still in the band. It was still
Uh huh.
fun. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, and now it's just a revolving door, it seems like, or so many people come into that band, and they're still great. I mean, Ketch is one of my favorite musicians, and you know, what a band leader. I mean, he's amazing. Yeah,
Cool.
if you're
Okay.
familiar with him, but yeah. Yeah, well, go ahead.
Yeah, so you started this business by yourself with the family minivan. Your first hire was actually a co-op student from the local Votech.
Yes.
Okay, where did it go from there? And you had a
Um,
quite Penn's Peak took up quite a bit of your time, it sounds like personally.
yeah, and then I started needing a lot of help. So I started talking to suppliers mainly because it's a small world, the electrical world. At some point you'll know, like, in different industries, how you get to know the people in it. It's a in the electrical industries, you almost start knowing everybody, and you start talking, say, "Hey, I need help," and you kind of help each other out. And it's like, "Oh, I know a guy who wants to leave this other company or whatever." And I said, "Well, I'll have him call me." And so I've had a few people like that for me. Luckily, I've been really, really lucky to have some fantastic people work for us. One of my main guys, Terry, he's phenomenal. He's same age as I am, and we'll both retire together at some point. But he's great. He's been with me for a long time. And before that, his brother worked for me, and but I'm really lucky finding the right people. And don't get
So,
me wrong, there's been a few people we've had to get rid of, but
like, don't get me wrong, we've had some duds.
yeah,
Okay, well, let me ask you this question in a more pointed way. Okay, just want to
sure.
make sure, especially because you're so happy with your team, and I hear people often, struggling to find and attract the right team members, and so what advice do you have for finding and building the right team?
I have found word of mouth is the best on finding people. Either people that worked with other people and they kind of bring them in. Definitely is the best. Hiring cold from like advertising and things, um, it's usually hit or miss. Sometimes I get lucky. We get lucky here. Other times we don't. A lot of people kind of embellish their resumes, and trying to get them out in the field and testing them to see their actual knowledge base, because they'll promise you the world, but in this world you can't hide. There's no hiding in the electrical field. It's like either you know how to do it or you don't, or you're willing to learn. And that's one of the hurdles. I've had people that they know what they know and don't want to learn anything else, kind of attitude. And And not being from that mindset, it's really hard for me to understand. Like, and I've always just wanted to learn, like constantly, still do. That's one of those things that I think it's important to grow as an individual. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Never stop.
Yeah.
Doing
No,
it
never
doing it
stop.
doing it right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like one of my big passions, hobbies is sailing. So I go sailing down the Caribbean all the time. Anyway, we had every winter I go down, and last year there was a couple that came on, and they had so much more experience than I did, like decades more experience. So I was almost nervous about them coming on the boat and sailing, and but I went in, the attitude is like, please teach me more. Like I'm always, and it was a great experience. They taught me some stuff, and but I was so open to learning, especially from people that have experience on the ocean, open water, and stuff. That was a lot of fun.
So, I'm listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad right now. Are you
Oh yeah,
familiar with the book? Yeah.
Richard
Did
Kiyosaki. Read all the stuff, listened to the CDs.
Okay. And he just hit on something, and I'm like, I bet Walt has read this guy. Okay. But what you just
Yeah.
said, he talks about being one of the defining characteristics of a successful small business owner is somebody who's perpetually open to learning
Oh yeah.
themselves. Yeah. And so one of the other things he mentions, that I'm trying to wrap my mind around is using your assets to purchase more assets. So before you take on any more overhead or expenses, like having an asset lined up to pay for that thing. And that's something that you have mentioned to me, and it made a huge impression on my husband. And he's explained it to me like, like Walt told me, like he when he has a job to do, he buys the tool if he knows he can you do other jobs with it, right? But then you might turn around and sell that tool, and
If I'm
and
not
that
using it. Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, you got it, instead of holding on to it.
Yeah.
um but that you think about acquiring assets to cover the additional expenses that you might incur. Tell me more
Yes.
about that.
Okay. So the primary one is the building that I'm in right now, the Kettle Hill building. You've been up here.
Yeah,
I'm
you
familiar.
you so I we both are volunteers for local sports.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
volunteer as a track and
Oh,
field
that's right. Yeah.
coach. I am the president of Jim Thorpe Youth Basketball at the moment, although I
Yeah.
don't play.
President. Nice.
Woo, yeah, go big or go home. That's my motto. But you loaned your boardroom there to us once to meet,
Sure.
and
Anytime.
thank you very much for
Available.
that. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I learned from that Rich Dad Poor Dad was have other things pay you back. So I have two partners when we built this building, and I rent most of it, but a third of it goes back in my pocket, for of the rent. The other two-thirds, not exactly, but a portion of it goes back in my pocket, obviously, because we have to still pay for the building. But again, this way the company is not all the rent is going to somebody else. It's some of it's coming back to me. And it's building equity that we can use for other things, which that equity we bought the building next door, me and Jen. We rent that out, and that mortgage is paying itself. So that's another asset that's going to have. And then we had the other one. One of my partners from this building and me bought it was dilapidated Bear Creek Plaza, and we bought it and started fixing that up, and fully rented it within a couple weeks. We had the place completely rented. We had to put a lot of money into it to get it up and running, like new parking lot, new entrance, repainted the whole place, the facade, mostly new electrical HVAC, mostly all new plumbing. It needed a lot of work. But again, those assets now are paying for themselves. And so, like Rich Dad Poor Dad says, say if you want to buy a boat, a doodad, like he calls him, um, have something else pay for it. So if I get passive income coming off of one of the rental properties, I can use that. Say I got $500 a month. I want to buy a boat that's going to cost me $500 a month. Don't buy that boat until you have that $500 a month allocated to pay for that boat. And that has taught me so many things, is not to extend yourself. You can finance things, but have something else make the payments. So it's like, and that's what I've been doing now since I started the business. Well, since I could It's saved up money to get. It's not just doing that right off the bat. You need to acquire equity first. But and as you
Right.
and build it, yeah,
And there are creative ways to build equity. Something that my husband and I did was we opted for a 15-year mortgage instead of a 30. Like
yes,
just starting with our own home. And I
yep.
know
I
uh
did the same thing.
Robert, what's his is it, I always want to say Kobayashi. That's Star Trek though.
Kiyosaki. I think it's
KS
Kiyosaki.
okay.
Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki. I thought it was Richard. It's been a
Let's just
while since
call
I've
him
heard
Bob. It's Bob.
this. Yeah.
Robbie. So,
He had a great history of growing up. That was
he
interesting what he
it's
did.
a good
Yeah.
story. Really, like that's what it all boils down to, right? Is the power of a story to help us learn. And yeah, and well but he's always hammering on, your home is a liability and not an asset. But from
Yes.
from my from my perspective, it's the best way that an average person can start to build some equity.
Absolutely. I agree.
And because you have to pay for where you live, and
Hmm.
if and you may as well, if you do it right. I mean, you could go underwater on your house for sure. I mean, or you could overextend
Hmm.
yourself, which is something I do not recommend. Definitely want to
No.
like make sure you can afford your home. But if you have to live somewhere, you may as well be paying yourself. So that
And so a lot of people take home equity loans to fix their house up or do something like put a swimming pool in their backyard. I worked the opposite way. I took equity from the house and invested it in building a building that was going to pay me back.
Yeah, and
And
that's where we're at right now. Like personally, like literally, like I could turn
hmm
this to my kitchen. It's right over there.
hmm
I just want to take a sledgehammer to the whole thing, and
just
it
wait.
need yeah, it needs repair. And so my son this morning, we just had this conversation. The other one, Julian, the older one, he's like,
Hmm.
we're talking we're building a new building for our winery, and it's
Hmm.
going to be on our property, so it's going to be our asset, and
Yes.
we're not going to be paying somebody else rent anymore,
Yep.
for using a building that's not on our property. So,
Yep.
and we figured it out, and I had to explain to him that eventually this is going to pay for itself, and then it's something that has enhanced the value of our property. And he was like, "Well, you better be careful not you spend too much money." And I'm like, "Well, this is going to pay for itself. It's going to enable us to make more money too. Like we did the math and we think we're going to be able to make 20% more just by building this building." And I'm like, "But, this kitchen, for instance, I want a whole new kitchen. I want. But that's not going to pay for itself."
Yeah. Absolutely.
Maybe if only we could put a monetary value on the joy it will spark every day when I
Exactly.
work in the remodeled kitchen. But I got an estimate from a friend that recently redid it, and it's like going to cost like $30,000
Mm.
probably. And that's even with doing some of the work ourselves. Maybe we could get it down. I don't know. But I'm already like, I'm using the rich dad, poor dad philosophy of like, okay, so how can I pay for this without taking a loan? What can I do to generate additional revenue to pay for that? And like, to take that a step further, he would find something that was going to keep generating revenue beyond that. So it's an interesting mindset shift.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's hard to explain that until you really get it. And then once it starts paying, it is amazing. Like like I was talking to you before, I was looking for another building that we could do something with the singer songwriter kind of listening room kind of a thing, which I'm still in the market for, by the way. I would love to do something like that as a passion project.
Right.
Um,
Those are the words I was thinking. This is a passion project.
but it would also have to pay for itself. And I
Those
think
were
I
the
said that
next
to you
words I
before.
was thinking. You are reading my mind, Walt.
But even if I'm not making a passive income out of it, if it could pay for itself and my time would be, I wouldn't expect for something like that for me to get paid for it. It would just be just to break even and get it
Right.
going.
Yep. And then
Um,
and then there's that added value to the
yeah,
community.
yeah, added value community and arts and giving people a chance because I've seen some of these open mics and it's great watching the passion of somebody going up there and really I still, like, when Matt, for example, does it at the Underground, I go there once in a while and I'll play it. I'm still nervous as hell. And I'll do 2 or 3 songs and I'm like, I almost come off that shaking. And I'm like, why am I shaking? you know, I'm like, but it's one of those things that the only way to get over that, I think, or at least make it easier, is to do it. There's no way to hide from that. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think like okay, so that's another thing that Robbie brings up in
yeah,
Rich Dad Poor Dad is fear, like dealing with
yeah,
fear. And I had that conversation with my kids recently, about performing,
yeah.
and how it's something for some reason I have always wanted to do my entire life. And
Hmm.
I put myself out there even though it terrifies me occasionally, and it gets
Yeah.
easier the more you do it. But working past that fear toward the goal, that I'm trying to achieve has, it's a struggle,
Oh yeah.
and a lot of people never get past that fear. And
You make it look easy though. You don't
oh,
look.
do I?
You look very comfortable when you're up there.
Hey, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, I've been practicing. I've been working on that. And one of the reasons I enjoy doing it is because it's one of the times in my life where I'm actually able to truly focus. And this is why I play music in general. Is just like the harmony that you experience with a band. You're you're doing something with other people and there's no discussion. You're on this other level. You know what I mean? You're just doing it and you're feeling it, and you're fully present, where like a lot of times, I'm overthinking things. The wheels are always turning, and you know, it's just such a lovely thing to be able to be fully present and then to share that with people, that they get to feel it too. And it's truly a unique experience that I'm very grateful to continue to have. And yeah, so thanks for showing
About
up.
music, like I've seen, like, from every genre of music, seeing people that are in tears watching one of their favorite artists, from heavy metal to, like, you've been seeing it with the Swifties, for example. Like, all the girls are crying or everybody's crying and watching, and like, I've seen, so Joni Mitchell at the Hollywood Bowl. I don't know if you caught any of that or if you watch any of that, but there were amazing artists there, and they were in tears watching Joni Mitchell, sing and stuff like that. But it's one of those things that's just the passion of how powerful music is, and I guess maybe that's why I guess I get a little bit hard on myself when I'm getting nervous, because I'm trying to make it really good, you know, as you
And
are, so,
yeah, I mean, we're not trying to suck, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Live from downtown Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. Wine, Cider, and Song, brought to you by Wild Elder Wine and Cider Company.
Old Wild Elder came down from the mountain, said the secret of youth ain't found in no fountain. If you want to feel spry, we past the age of 99. You gotta have a daily chug of Wild Elderberry wine. You gotta drink it dry. Elderberry wine. You gotta drink it dry. Wild Elderberry wine. You gotta drink it dry. Elderberry wine. And it'll probably cure what ails you.
I think okay, so I'll share one of the thoughts that's helped me get over some of my fear with you. Well, and somebody said this to me, and I can't even attribute it. So I wish I could and say thank you. But one of the things, and I've heard this about other things actually. So there are parallels. Just that 90% of the people in the room, 9 out of 10 people, would never be able to do what you're doing right now. Like showing up at the open mic and
Mhm.
standing up in front of everybody and playing your song. Like 9 out of 10 people would never do that. And so the fact that you're doing it is just magic to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you could remember that, like you could like cut yourself some slack.
Is that the old one where you imagine everybody in the audience in their underwear or something?
it's it's not so much that as just like giving yourself a little pep talk for just showing up. That
Yeah.
you got
Yeah.
like you had the guts to even before you strummed on your guitar at all or a note came out of your mouth. It's like you had the courage to show up, and like 9 out of 10 people wouldn't even get that far. So the rest is like should be easy.
I know, right?
Once you can get over that huge hill, then you can just sort of play with that other 10%, I guess. If you're carrying over that ratio to the challenge, like the 10% that remains is and I think conveying something that's going to make people feel something, and making sure that it feels good to you still too. And hopefully it's fun, because if it's not fun, why do it?
Like, yeah. Once it becomes a job, it's like, huh.
Well, it's interesting, like, you're
Yeah.
talking about your business, like, it seems like you like a lot of variety, and you don't necessarily like to keep doing the same thing,
I get
but you
bored
s
fast.
but you've stayed within a niche, and
Hmm.
so you're just exploring, like, new sides of the same thing, so it's interesting that like you're able to do that. And I feel like as a small business owner like myself, that's something that I really enjoy is the variety. It's important to find like good systems and whatnot, and to build the right team, and to have a way of operating. But then you know to try to you got to keep finding those ways to keep things new and fresh,
Yes, I agree. And having the time for it.
and having the time for what.
Just to keep things fresh. That's one of the things that, yeah, because day-to-day operations can get busy, really busy sometimes. And like, for example, yesterday, I had to postpone this because I was so slammed. We had a couple guys call off sick and, oh, Friday. It was Friday. Yeah, last Friday.
We've
Yeah,
rescheduled twice, it's okay.
I know.
So you're always shuffling things around
But
when
thank you for your
you're.
understanding on that
Oh,
because
yeah,
it's,
no, I get it. Yep, sometimes you gotta be the one that shows up and puts out the fire. So, how did you find customers?
I was, it was word of mouth in the beginning. And then that kind of just multiplied word of mouth. So I've never been a big advertiser besides what I always call them the driving billboards, the stuff on the trucks, like,
Oh, yeah.
other than, and then I'll only advertise for, um, I've typically only advertised for local rags if it's a benefit for something like the firehouse or ambulance or something like that, or a school. I always try to advertise for basketball, youth basketball, and Jim Thorpe,
You're on the
things like
t-shirt.
that. I kind of do that, and that's kind of my advertising. It's when an advertiser calls me and say, "Oh, you want to advertise with us to do this, that, this?" I'm like, "Not really. I'm okay. We're busy enough." And the website, which it's overdue right now at this point, but we're still, you know, we do that, and just the amount of repeat business we have in word of mouth has kept us busy. And
Yeah, so I'm sensing a theme here, because that was also how you like to hire, word of mouth. But like
mhm,
when you were back in the minivan and it was just you, like how did you find
yeah.
customers?
Oh, whew, that was
Search the
kind of
archives.
like. It started with one job. It's like I got a job. And the first bigger job I got was at the Times News building. They put a big addition on and they wanted to put a whole new fire alarm system in. So I worked with one of my friends, Control Security. He was doing all the security stuff at the time, but everything had to be in conduit. And I'm good at bending conduit. So I said, all right, I'll do all the conduit work, and you just have to pull the wire and hang the devices. And so that actually led me to Penn's Peak, because then we were putting the fire alarm at Penn's Peak. Now, this is before Penn's Peak opened up in 2001. They opened in 2002 with Brad Paisley. He was the first act there. But before that, we were putting a fire alarm in there, and that's when they found me. The manager, general manager, says, "Who do you know? You know anybody do stage lighting?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like I said in the beginning, it's a bunch of light bulbs on and off, you know." And then I got sucked into doing that, and then doing the addition there, and I pretty much rewired the whole entire place. Like if you go there, every single light fixture you see in that place, WB Electric put in, you know, so inside and out. And so that kept us, and then that just passed off. And then people that work for Pencor or something, or they're like, "Oh, my friend needs this done and this done." And then I started getting generators, which we do a lot of generators now. I have about 600 of them we installed for just home standbys that we maintain throughout the area. So that became a giant piece of our business, and it still continues to be on our residential side. On our commercial side, we do everything from supermarkets to factories, like Weiss Supermarket down in Allentown. We ground up the whole entire thing, but we've done 4, I think, Weiss supermarkets. The Tractor Supply in Lehighton, we did that. And we did all about the 4 local Tractor Supplies. We did those. We've
I
done
have a question
banks.
for you.
Yeah.
So I'm still imagining you in this minivan with a high school kid. And I mean, what I know what it's like to be a sole proprietor. I mean,
Yeah.
one half anyway here. But we've had conversations about growing our business,
Hmm.
how much more we could do if we hired. And I've had conversations with other sole props who are like, I just can't trust anybody else to do this job. Like, how did you get over that hurdle? And like, tell me more about that.
That's a hard one, because I can be a stickler. Like this weekend, for example, I went and had to fix something that one of the younger guys, screwed up, and I had to go fix it. And that's one of the things that then I come back, and without trying to yell, I explain what they did wrong and how I had to fix it on a Sunday, things like that. So the trust, I think, is built over time, and they have to have a respect for you as the business owner. I find if they lose respect, it's then they don't try as hard or don't focus on the work to do it to my level. They can hear me talking, but until they actually have seen the work I've done, and the ones that know me and my company, and the ones that have seen me in the field and see my level of expertise and my level of what I want to have make sure is done. It's the great part. It's the ones that don't. They think I'm just a business owner, and I haven't been there. You know what I mean? And I tried to explain to them, like, yes, I've been there. I know what you're looking at. I've seen it. Like 99% of the things like that you run into, I've seen and have the issues. So it's kind of, but that trust is still something I'm learning how to do.
So tell me about like this respect. Like,
Hmm.
is it is it like respect as in like your business? They respect not only your expertise, but that your business and your reputation are are important.
Yes, and I basically, um, yeah, it's what it is. The reputation, it all falls back on me. I try to say it's our company, but still my name's on it. It's my initials. It's my reputation. Like, for example, Terry, my main guy, I can hand him a roll of drawings and send him off to a job, and I don't even ever have to go to that job. I know it'll be done right. That's the kind of respect that he has for me and I have for him. So it is a two-way street. That the trust. If I have to go up and follow up on jobs all the time, um, then I don't feel it's like I'm respected on that aspect. But it's it's tough. I'm sure you're a business owner,
Well, just Josh is kicking around the idea of, maybe an apprentice to help with winemaking and somebody that you train to
Hmm.
start their own winery someday.
Yeah.
Um, and he would have to supervise that person very closely for a while and then let them start their own batches and
Yep.
yeah, it's just going to take time and there's risk in anything, right? Like you just got to
Hmm.
manage it. Again, going back to the fear conversation we were having before, like
Hmm.
not letting that negative like self-talk about like, oh yeah, then you got to worry about them not showing up, and you got to worry about you can list out a million things that you could worry about with trusting an individual to help you grow your business. But it seems like the rewards are worth the risk.
Risk versus risk reward. Like, so for example, I've put my chips in a lot of times in my life. I've pushed all my chips in from when I built this building. I had nothing left. I had zero savings. I had equity on my house and everything, hoping that when we build it, that we'd rent it out, to pay me back. But
I think if I've
you
heard
know,
of that. If you build it, they will come. Is that
yeah, yeah,
the field of
yeah.
dreams? The pole building of dreams.
Yes, right. And I still find myself doing that little risk reward, but it's more calculated. I've learned a lot. I've made my mistakes, and you learn a lot over it.
Okay, I've mentioned
Yeah,
2 out of 3 of my kids. I gotta mention the 3rd one. Part of the reason I had to reschedule and push us back just a little bit today was I had to talk to my daughter, like a half-hour long phone call about something rough that happened to her today, and I just emphasized, what can you learn from it? What
yeah,
you know, what did you learn? Like, because at the end of the day, like, it could be worse. Remind yourself that, and then just learn from it and move on so that the next time you're better prepared to deal with it. So,
yeah.
I
Like
don't
my daughter, she totaled her two first cars, and so yeah, I
and she walked away.
walked through
Like,
both of them with minor
she's
scrapes.
yeah.
And yeah, so it was both trying times, but hopefully she learned.
If you could do if you could do anything differently, if you were starting over today even, 'cause, you've been in the business long enough that a lot has changed. And I know from personal experience, like with our photo business, like the way that we started our photo business would be different today probably based on just changes in the world. So if you could do anything different in starting a business like yours today, what would it be?
So going back to 2001, my energy level was so much higher.
Go
Um,
figure. Youth and
I tr-
energy? Shucks.
And if I could tell anybody that's starting a business and they're at least in their 30s and their 40s, that grab the bull by the horns and go as hard as you can, because it does get more difficult. Like you just said, to try to what would I do right now if I had to restart? That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know if I have the energy
Yeah.
that I had back then. Um, but the knowledge would probably help me from what I've learned over the years.
I guess not you personally. Think about
Yeah.
like one of your talented staff people or somebody who wants to start their own business. Like what would you do differently based on or would you do it the same?
One of the things I've watched companies start off and grow way too fast and then go bankrupt. Or they have one big mistake and go bankrupt. We've had our mistakes. There was one point where um when you remember when the housing market kind of crashed in 2008, 2009, 2010, around there.
Mhm.
um it was rough. We were on ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I had probably three people working at the time, and it was very, very difficult. And it was one of those perfect storms, like where I put all my chips in, like to build a building, and then the market fell out. you know
Oh.
so you had to kind of stay in there, and we worked. Jen was working multiple jobs. I was working, yeah, pen speak as much as I could, and doing wiring houses, doing whatever I could. And at that same time, I had two friends get laid off from a big corporation, and they said, "Hey, we're getting paid. Why don't we help you build a website and a brand?" And they were awesome. We got a case of beer and we went up to that conference room upstairs, and we came up with the logo, the WB Electric logo, and the colors, and we just had, but they helped me so much in the beginning to get that small piece of marketing that um, paid dividends over the years, because now it's a noticeable brand in the area with the green trucks and just the logos. Um, One of the things I would definitely tell somebody is never burn any bridges whatsoever. Don't burn a bridge. I've only had to burn one in my life, but it was very, I had to. Not going to get into that, but it was tough. It was a really tough situation. But anyway, yeah, if I were to tell anybody that we're going to start their own company, it was like, stay, stay focused, go slow. Don't don't try to grow too fast. Whenever we bought a new truck, it was a calculated decision. Like, even I just bought one just recently, and the new trucks are a lot, like my first trucks were all used. Like, I would find used trucks and drive them and put 200 some thousand miles onto them and keep the band-aids on them until they were done their useful life, and then get another one. And I just recently, maybe in 2010, is when I started buying newer vehicles because I get more life out of them, and we could afford it at the time. So, now we're at, from that family minivan, we're at 10 trucks, and it's crazy. Like, if you would have told me this 20 years ago that I have 10 trucks, I'd be like, what? I didn't want to get that big.
But
But
you do the math, I'm assuming, on like, well, this truck equals this many more jobs that we could do that's
yeah,
gonna pay for it. It becomes like an incremental cost of X number of jobs that you're
yeah.
that you're
And
that you're able to take on then.
when you're early on, I learned this from the Beatles. They never turned down a gig in the beginning, and they took every gig. And I did that for the first, I probably still, I hate turning down any job. In the beginning, definitely for the first decade, I'd never turn down a job. I would figure out a way to do it. Even if I was hiring a friend of mine or to help me, or if I had to put the extra hours in, you know, if I'd go over the 100 hours that week, but people think 100 hours. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, until one of my best friends said, you work a lot. I'm like, nah. I'm like, I still screw off. I still ride and hike and stuff like that. They're like, log your hours just for the heck of it to see where you're at. And yeah, I was working 100-hour weeks and not realizing it. But
Uh,
it, try it sometime. Log your hours.
yeah. Yeah, these are all good tips. Okay. I honestly could talk to you for another hour.
Yeah.
But my last question for you is about like the future. I mean, you mentioned once on this talk already about Terry, and you might retire at the same time.
Yeah.
What are your goals for the future? And like, have you thought about an exit strategy?
Funny you say that. It was a few years ago. I got a financial advisor, um, and I decided to go with an outside financial advisor out of the area here. And one of his questions in our first meeting was, "What's your exit strategy?" I'm like, "Exit strategy? What are you talking about? I'm
Go
still,
work,
I'm still,
go work till I die.
I gotta work my ass off." And then it sunk in, and I'm like, "Oh shit! I should probably really think about this, not only for myself, but for my wife, Jen, and like, I've watched businesses go where you got the owner stayed in too long, and that corporate curve, just starts dropping down because of the energy level and what they can bring to the table in a business. And then, so, I lost sleep over thinking about that, an exit strategy. Ideally, I would love to sell internally. We have some younger guys, a lot of potential in this company. I would absolutely love for them to be able to take over the company, and keep it rolling. Um, If not, the exit strategy would be to try to sell to somebody else, or whatever, in our company, merge with somebody that's a younger company. Obviously, I'd like to get a cash out from me and some of my key employees, on that, because I would definitely take care of, the people that have been here, the longest, and been through the, the good and bad. So, yeah.
The people that were eating ramen with you back in 2008.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And staying with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So,
good luck.
and
Good luck with that. Seriously, like it's wonderful that, you don't feel threatened by that thought, although it does sound like you did have to work through some emotions to get to, your conclusion here.
yeah,
Um,
because you start thinking, oh, am I that old? You know, like, why do I have to think about this yet? Like, oh crap. So, but I'm not that old. But again, like I was saying for my wife, for example, I wanted to be able to. We need to being able to enjoy the rest of our lives, and we put our time in, kind of thing. So, when do we want to start that next chapter is really
yeah,
important. Yeah.
and and to give a quick nod to your wife, like she's sort of like she holds down the command center, right? Like what
Oh
what
yeah.
is her role with the company?
She's the office manager here, HR, and we have another girl in the office that's fantastic. Melissa's wonderful. She does all the dispatching and stuff, and a lot of the organization is due to her. And it's we have their office staff here has been great so far. We've dialed it in, so we're but we still run across our hurdles, But
A- and did she help you early on, Jen?
oh yeah, yeah. Early on, it was just me, but then I started handing over. I couldn't handle doing.
Billing and whatnot?
Well, I would do the billing. Um, I would do the invoicing. I still do a lot of the invoicing.
Okay.
Um, but a lot of the smaller stuff is not, I don't even see it anymore. That kind of goes through the process and then Jen will send that out. And some of the bigger projects I barely get to see anymore because that's different. The real bigger projects are on, monthly schedules and stuff. It gets a little complicated on that one, especially prevailing wage jobs and things. But
Mm, that's a union jobs, you mean?
yeah, we're a non-union shop doing rate work. Right now, if we were a union here, we'd be the only union contractors in Carbon County.
Okay.
So it would be we'd put ourselves out of business. We wouldn't be able to charge those rates around here. So when we are using on jobs with public money, we have to pay the rates, whatever the labor rates are, would be union rates. So the guys like those. I like to mix those in once in a while because they get paid a little over double what they get paid now on normal rate. So they love the rate work. So uh,
Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't overlooking Jen's contributions toward
oh,
growing
it's I couldn't have done this
WB
without her.
Electric.
I couldn't have done this without her. Huge. Yeah, there's no way I could have done this without her. She holds down the fort, and having a spouse on it really she keeps an eye on everything. So if there's a part of the company bleeding, she'll catch it.
Mom puts the Band-Aid on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're a really, really good team together. The hard part about that with the spouse, which too, probably is taking the work home. Sometimes I try not to, and it goes both ways because like sometimes when I get home, I just don't want to talk about work. I just want to talk to my dog and go for walks, look at the
Josh and
trees and birds.
Josh and I have I think gotten better, hopefully, at it over the years to the point where we probably should be talking more. But the one hard fast rule that I'll share, to recommend to any couples that share a business is definitely no work pillow talk.
No, no, because that starts the wheels turning, and then forget it. I can't sleep.
And
And
you ruined your spouse's night's sleep, and
yeah,
so like I'm very good about it, and so is Josh, but if I think
yeah,
of something like, and I just make a note. I'm gonna
yep,
almost like I put it on the agenda for the next time we're gonna talk business, and
yep.
I just don't bring it up.
That's
And
huge because I think that
mhm.
would ruin a lot of relationships if they brought it to bed every night. I
Yeah,
really do.
just ruin your health. You need a good night's sleep, so
Yeah.
don't don't talk about business anywhere near bedtime.
No, it's bad enough that, I'm a very limited sleeper. Even this morning I was up at 4 because, I woke up thinking about something for work and then that's it. At that point, I just get up, go
No,
to the
yeah,
office.
you might as well. Just go.
Like, I guess that's enough sleep.
Yeah, it'll do. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Walt, for taking the time to talk today. It was really fun, truly. Like my cheeks are
Thank
so
you.
rosy from like all the laughing we've been doing.
Yeah.
Now
I
we're
don't know how red this looks.
yes, we're both so rosy red. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So
Well,
I
thank
hope you
you so much.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
This is great. I've never done this before, so this is really fun. I hope I did it
Cool.
right.
There will be a grade. You will receive it via mail in a report in a report card format. All right. Well, I
Great.
will be in touch. Thank you so much, Walt. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Launch Local is an original podcast produced and recorded by Amber Artemis at Leisure Lane Studio in Jim Thorpe, PA. Show music is by Joshua Finsel. This is a video podcast available for viewing on YouTube or at the show website, launchlocal.biz, where you can subscribe to the show newsletter and find helpful tools like the Ready to Launch quiz. Take the quiz at launchlocal.biz to find out how I could help you launch your own local business.